I hope that you are seated comfortably, with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Somebody there?
Hello and welcome back to Ecto Portal. Another evening to the unknown, the spectacular, the extraordinary. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with
Verna Wilson,
my co-host.
Tonight we have Jill Tracy in the studio, and we're going to be talking to her about her music, about her her inspiration from playing in different places, different atmospheres. Many of them that are heavy with spirit energy. What she picks up, what's her inspiration, what some of the stories and some of the projects that she's done, and we are going to definitely get into all of that. And
sounds good.
And yeah,
Jill Tracy, our special guest in studio. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Tony. Verna. It's fun to be here.
In our old Oddfellows basement building.
yeah, and you went up to the old wall, so
The old pre-earthquake
this would
wall.
actually be a really good place for you to play some of your music.
No, didn't
and
you tell
pick
me
up
there's a
on.
grand piano? Because so for people that are listening that don't know, this station is in the old Oddfellows
Yeah.
building.
The bowels of the old
in the
Oddfellows.
basement. We're in the basement.
Yeah, and the
it's
basement's
haunted.
very haunted.
And they're bricks that you said were pre-earthquake.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the original
Which was in
foundation.
1906,
The building
of
was a
course.
beautiful Gothic building before the earthquake. Huge and Gothic. I mean, it looked like a castle.
It was gorgeous.
And then the only reason they had it was demolished because the fire department had to go through it to put the fire out. It wasn't because of the
Wow.
earthquake.
Wow.
So they had to sacrifice it. What's interesting about down here in the basement, just in case you pick up on that, is I think it was like 5 years ago, this was still a dank, flooded basement. And what they came down here when they drained it to make use of it in the building, they found some of the coffins with some of the skeletons still in them floating around. All the paraphernalia, the ritual materials, the robes, all flooded and just in water.
From
Leftovers
From
from
leftover from
years
years
past
ago.
that had been stored down here, but then it flooded and it just sort of sat down there. Nobody wanted to go down here. In fact, when they came down here with flashlights, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't stay down here."
wow, and that was just 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So and we do have one upstairs.
And that's why you said, let's do our radio show down
Yeah,
here.
exactly. By chance. So go ahead and explain what you are good at.
Well, I am
Very good at.
I'm a pianist and a singer. But in addition to that, I love to immerse myself in these unusual locations to conjure music. So I won't say I'm not a ghost hunter. I'm more of a conduit, and I just love to immerse myself in whatever the energy is and use that to create music. I tap into that emotion. I allow myself to kind of open the channel. So some of the places, it's not necessarily having to be a haunted place. It could be something, I did this in the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. There's the nation's foremost collection of medical oddities. So I
Wow.
spent nights alone with
Wow.
all the skeletons and specimens and wanted to connect with their stories, because I do believe in what I like to call sonic residue, that anything that's happened through the years, it's hanging. It's hanging. All the stories, all that, I walk through that museum, and there's a collection. It's the Hurtle Skull Collection, and all of these skulls from just decades and decades. And you see the little plaque on the skeleton of how they, or the skull rather, of how they died. A woman, 19, tightrope walker, died of a broken neck.
Wow.
And there's another
so
one, like he was a
sad.
pirate.
So each
in
one
the
has its
16th.
own story.
So it's like, wow, I'm sitting in the presence of all of these stories, all these emotions, and what would it be like to just sit at a piano in here and just allow all of that in, and using that together. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a haunted place. I have, certainly been in haunted places to do this, and have been back and forth residing in Lilydale this year.
Wow.
And was so honored that the Lilydale Assembly, the town, invited me to record in the old auditorium from 1883.
Wow, that's cool.
Where they held seances. And this was also
Wow.
where, I stayed in the home, which now a medium lives, but supposedly the home that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle liked to,
Oh,
when he
wow.
went to Lilydale, he would stay in this house.
Wow, very big
because
spiritualist.
Very.
Yes.
And then I was really captivated reading of his friendship, I'm sure you know, with Houdini, who
Yeah.
would
Oh, yeah.
come to Lilydale,
Uh-huh.
and the legend was that, like, Houdini would walk the grounds and the mediums would shut their doors and close the curtains, because he was there to debunk all of this. And so, and then the feminist movement, like Susan B. Anthony spoke in that auditorium, because Lilydale was very open to the free thinkers.
They were.
And I love just, I'm in this energy of all of these things
Yeah.
happened right
Wow.
where I am sitting. And they were so gracious to me. I had a key. I was shocked, actually. They're like, here's the key to the auditorium.
Wow.
Just come and go. Because I went to Lilydale off season to begin doing this, because it's only open to the public a few weeks through the summer.
Oh, okay.
So I went off season, so everything is closed. And I loved it. I felt like I had my own private ghost town, because you'd walk around and there's nothing.
So you could
I couldn't
come and
even
go
get any
day or night. You could come and go whenever you wanted.
in the auditorium, because
Yeah.
I did not have a
Something.
car.
I can imagine the
I
library
was
there
trapped
too.
there. There's no grocery store. This is
So
off
you like
season.
had to camp there.
There's
literally
no,
when you
I
wanted
was
to do it.
camping there. I stayed in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's favorite house, and when they picked me up from the Buffalo airport, took me right to their version of Whole Foods. What's it called? Wegmans or something. It's a fantastic place. And I just stocked up. It's like, all right, I got to get all my provisions.
How long was the longest you actually were there at a time to do that?
2 weeks at it for,
Okay.
and I've been going back and forth, but the duration of each trip was about 2 weeks.
Wow.
So, that's a lot of groceries too.
Did you take breaks, or did people come visit you, or were you just like, I'm in the zone, I'm by myself, I'm going to do this?
Pretty much that. Like during the day, I would go into the library. The Marion Skidmore Library it's the largest collection of spiritualist books in the
Oh
world.
man, you're speaking my language
Wow.
now.
And the library, has become my big champion. She's a fantastic, you go in there, she can answer any question, she can direct you to things. So I would do research.
Oh, lucky you.
And I would walk around, and what I decided to do, and usually as these things happen, I love the phrase planning is guessing, because you can't plan anything, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I went in there to do is nothing like what actually ended up being the project.
But you expected that, right?
Hence why I have a fundraiser now. Well, I thought I was just going to go there and do a little research, and I remember saying, gee, it would be great to get maybe, 10 minutes of music if I could get to the piano, because the piano in the old auditorium is the original piano. It's the only one that they've ever had there, and I
Wow.
retraced some of that back to the early 1900s. So it was like, thinking,
Imagine
wow,
who
all the
played
people
that.
that touched that piano, and and there's scientific studies, especially with wood instruments, that the impressions left in the wood just by touching it, or oils on your fingers, and it changes it. So I think, wow, all the people that have touched this piano, and all the the seances and the spiritualist meetings that have happened in there.
And they sounded a little different then too. Pianos, older pianos from the current. The tones were a little different.
Right.
Yeah.
And they God bless them, they had it tuned for me, but it was still a very old piano. So this is a good segue into it was an old piano. So when I first got in there, I did, what I'm used to in a recording studio, a really clean mic technique under the lid. We got these close-up mics, XY pattern. We're going to do some other stereo mics. And I started recording, so I had to be self-sufficient with this. It was just me alone.
Did you bring your own decks, your own recording decks?
And and it was just all ended up going into my laptop, like a bunch of mics and interface and all going into the laptop. But so I started doing this like more slick pro recording studio technique, and then listening back to it, it was picking up all the mechanical problems with the piano, because it sounded okay, but it was squeaky, and there was like part of the pedal that would sort of thud, and I was listening back, and I thought, well, gee, I don't really want, it's interesting, but I don't want a whole album of you just hear the problems with this piano. So I started kind of moving microphones around, and I started just recording the room sounds, and I fell in love with that, because you actually hear, it's an open air auditorium, so you hear this beautiful echoey environment, and then you hear the birds, and then you hear just the sound of being in there, the space. And I sort of started finding more sweet spots to mic the piano, because it sounded great in the room.
This is an indoor auditorium or an outdoor?
It's an indoor auditorium, but they're panels that sliding, heavy panels. So when it's really hot in the summer, they can slide those panels open.
Okay.
So it's
the birds and the
open. Yeah. When I was in there, those panels were closed, but you could still hear the birds. And at first I'm like, these damn birds, you can hear them. but then I fell in love with the whole thing, because it was so telling of like, this is what it sounds like when you're in Lilydale. You're alone in this, historical auditorium where they've had seances, and they're birds, and this is what it sounds like. So I decided to kind of go the totally opposite end with the project, and I have all of these mics set up, but they're all in the room. So you're hearing the piano, it sounds lovely, but it's more of a whispery effect. It's you're hearing it within the environment. And then what's so beautiful is things would happen as they will, and there's some occasions where the birds, and it was like you were saying earlier, the animals are so sensitive to these things. And I work with resonant tones and frequencies, so I try to find the resonant tones in that room with that piano that I'm getting a reaction from, and the birds will they'll tell you when you get, like, they respond. And there are these sections where I play a melody, and then the bird repeats it back to me. It's the wildest.
That's really cool.
It's the wildest thing. And
That's
then
cool.
and then I'm like, oh my God, that bird just sung the same thing back. And then so I'm rolling tape as I do this, and I'm like, well, I'm going to do it again, And then so I play a little thing, and then the bird sings it back, and I was like, this is
Animals
crazy.
respond
It's
to music
beautiful.
really well.
Yeah, like we couldn't plan this better.
No, they were my accompanist, and then I got the idea from all of this is, well, I want to go out in Lilydale and do these field recordings and get there's a bell that sounds through the day, twice a day, to let the people in the town know that their message is from spirit. To gather, you hear the bell, and you walk to that auditorium.
So cool.
And it's like, well, I've got to have the bell. If you've gone to Lilydale, you know that bell. And then there is woods that surround Lilydale. It's a tiny, tiny town. It's a private town of mediums and spiritualists, for people that don't know. It was founded in the 1800s, and it's the birthplace of modern spiritualism was in that part of New York, up in the upstate New York. But in the woods, you can walk through, which is just gorgeous, ancient trees. And there is an old tree, huge tree that was struck by lightning in the 1800s, and it's very charged. And it's supposed to be the most powerful point in Lilydale, and they do come to get messages from spirit at that stump. And they call it Inspiration Stump. So I'm like, well, I have to do some field recording. Like, what's it like to be at the stump what does that sound like? Because the energy sonically, I think, transfers. So
Now, when
I
you-
just got into doing all these field recordings.
But when you do field recordings, are you? I mean, obviously, you're not hauling your piano with you, right? When you go through when you go to the stump or you go to a specific spot, are you just? How are you actually recording? Are you recording just the ambiance of the area?
And are you just sitting and just taking it in, or are you?
Yeah, I couldn't drag the piano around, although that would be really
be
fun
cool.
to
That
bring
would
the
be
piano
cool,
into
wouldn't
the Leland Woods.
Put it down over here, boys.
Get those mediums. You can see all the mediums moving a heavy piano, but no, that didn't happen. Not this trip, maybe the next trip. But I just wanted to capture the environment, and then it's going to sort of blend in with, because I love that. I love just giving this sort of sonic souvenir to people. Like, this is what it sounds like when you're standing at Leland Woods, and there are these birds that are indigenous to the area, and just beautiful sounds of crickets and these just so much nature. There's so much activity there. So I would take the recorder and the mics and have to be quiet, during that. But that was a beautiful meditative time for me, because like
Yeah.
I said, I was alone. I was off season. There was nobody around, and I would just be as quiet as I could. And one night, I'll never forget, like one of the most beautiful memories I've ever had is I saw on my iPhone that it was going to be a thunderstorm. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to go record this thunderstorm, because in the auditorium you could hear, the rain on the roof and this
Yeah.
beautiful tinkling sound, and how amazing to like capture a thunderstorm in Lilydale and then have that for
auditorium.
people to hear.
Yeah.
So I got all set up, and the iPhone said it was going to start at 2:00, and so I get in there and I'm all set up, and then I hear a clap of thunder. So I started recording, and then I had to be really quiet. So I just had a blanket, and I was just lying on my back in that auditorium alone, listening to it rain. And I just kind of dozed, and that was just so powerful and beautiful.
Yeah, the
Wow.
thunder
I'll
too.
never forget that, and the thunder, and
That's cool.
so that will be mixed in. I just came back. I have hours of all this stuff, so I'm figuring out how to kind of blend it together. And then also the library allowed me to have some vintage recordings of old spiritualist
Oh,
services.
that would be something to listen
and
to.
an old organ from
Wow.
the 1940s.
That'll be cool to mix that
yeah,
in.
and I haven't even listened to all of that yet, but that would
Wow.
be amazing to hear the old sermons and the old, mixed in
Oh,
with
I'd love
the,
to hear that.
with the thunder and the birds and the it's just it's going to be so fun putting that together.
Wow. That's a big project.
Yeah. Can I mention there's a fundraiser
You
for
sure
it?
can.
Yeah, of course.
Go for it.
Because it costs money to. They don't, newsflash, they don't pay you to do this. Nobody pays you to go and live with mediums and record, but you've got to do these things in life when you have the opportunity, and it was very meaningful to me and a challenge as an artist. So you can go. So the project is called The Secret Music of Lilydale. And you can go to my website, jilltracy.com, JILLTRACY.com. There's a link there. Or you can go directly. I launched a GoFundMe to help to make this happen. And it's gofundme.com/Jill Tracy in Lilydale, all one word.
one
And I
word.
do believe that we posted the GoFundMe link on the Ecto portal page.
Oh, thank you so much.
So everybody, it's on the Ecto portal page. Go ahead and check out the GoFundMe link. It has some fascinating stories and pictures in there.
And I put a link to your website too in our station post.
Yeah.
Oh, great! Because
Yeah, there's a link
it's
to a
right on the
website.
website, and then also on Twitter, I'm Jill Tracy Music, and then it's a pinned tweet at the top. So they have different ways to find the link, but and then
it
for
out.
donating, of course, you will get all of this music and recordings, and through All Souls Day. How's that for a themed contest?
All Souls
Through
Day.
All Souls Day, I'm actually working with Lilydale to offer anyone that donates gets a chance to win actual artifacts from Lily Dale's collection in the library.
Oh, I'm going to envy that winner.
So
Enter.
you could be one, but
okay.
it's going to be
All
a
right.
random draw. There's more than one. They have been digging up the coolest things for me, so that is going on right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good opportunity to grab something unusual.
It is.
Especially for ghost hunters who are listening. Check
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah.
Go to the GoFundMe site.
I did bring, they presented me with, the librarian with an old spirit trumpet that was part of her collection.
Oh, wow.
And I
Wow.
had that in the auditorium with me because I like to surround myself with objects and things
Yeah.
that evoke that story, that space. And then also, we've all heard of the Fox sisters.
I was just
and,
going to
Oh,
ask.
yeah.
They
Fox,
must have
yeah.
gone there at some point, right?
well, the remnants of their cottage is still there. The
answers
cottage
that.
was moved there, and then it
Yep.
burned
Oh.
down, I believe, in 1955 or thereabouts.
Didn't they tour too? Back
yeah,
in the
I
day,
believe
didn't
they did
tour
tour,
for
yeah.
a while?
The sisters or the
The
cottage?
sisters.
The sisters.
Did they drag
Yeah.
the house around on a Winnebago?
There
Yeah,
is a
they toured,
challenge.
and I guess they
Oh,
were
yeah,
they were
yeah.
thought to be frauds later because of the tours, because they
Yeah.
were expected to perform when they really probably weren't really feeling it.
Yeah, not all mediums can perform on demand. It doesn't
Well,
always
that
work
whole
that way.
that whole story is fascinating.
They should make a
because-
movie of that. They've
They
never
really
done
should.
that.
Have they? I
No.
don't know. But the whole story is fascinating because all over Lilydale you see pictures of the Fox sisters. But when you read about it, it was really the spiritualism movement was based on something that they later, as children, said was a prank. That they said they were, heard rapping, and it was the communicating with the spirit of a dead, a murdered peddler. And then later, the girls said that they were able to snap their toes and dangle apples on a string to make these sounds, and it was all just a prank. And then there was it's fascinating because there's a whole camp of people that believed, oh, it's a prank, this was nothing, and then a lot of people say, no, it is not a prank. They were communicating with spirits, and that's how spiritualism began. So it's crazy because there are still two different camps, and some people that still emphatically believe. And
Do you think Houdini ever stayed there at Lilydale? Do you think they ever let him stay there?
I heard it's not in the records that he was actually there, but if you talk to people that have lived there and oh, so and so's grandmother, this and that he did come there and walk around. I don't know if he stayed overnight, but he would come there and want to
Don't they have a guest
test
book at Lilydale?
mediums.
They have a guest book where people stay there and they sign a guest book there? Because I've heard that they had a guest book, and that would be the place to look.
Maybe in the library.
Maybe in the library. Yeah, and I don't know how far back that guest book would go, or
Because
but I was asking them in the library.
I'm sure there's a
about
lot
that.
of famous people. If there was a guest book, there'd be a lot of famous people that documented their stay.
Oh, I just got a text from a friend that says this sounds fantastic. So
Oh, that's great.
thank you. I wanted to preface, I realize you're playing some of my songs, and I just wanted to let people know the Lilydale Project and the music that I do in these locations, it's all instrumental music, if that makes a difference. Like it's all piano-based instrumental music. Because people often
there's
say,
no
do you write a
vocals
song?
on this at all, right?
No, it's two very different things I do. I write songs, which I love, and then I do this spontaneous music in these locations, which I think of as sonic archeology, and so it's a very different.
Do you approach them very differently, I would imagine?
Such a different experience, yeah. And it's really the opposite, because when you're writing songs, it's very confining. I have to have a verse and a chorus, and then how do I get back to and then writing the bridge, and I have to have the lyrics, and they have to fit, and there's so many rules that are very caging with it. But then with the spontaneous music, it's just I just go in and
More organic.
yeah, it's alive, like whatever comes out and that's the beauty, but also the challenge of it, especially if I'm doing it in front of an audience, because I can't really prepare.
And it takes on a structure, though. I mean, it comes out, but it takes on a structure, doesn't it? And it starts to kind of build as you go along.
Things will start to reveal themselves, absolutely. Like you'll find, I'll work with the resonant tones or start to get, what notes where I'm getting. I don't know if it's a reaction. Sometimes it is. It's more of a feeling of like this is where I need to be in this space, and then you start to kind of find it, finding a way into it. It's the portal. Like I'm finding what's going to get me there, and then things will start to reveal, and melodies will come out, and then these pieces emerge. And often when I listen back to them, I don't remember playing them.
Wow.
If people always ask me, well, gee, how can you recreate that for another live show? If there is a melody that I really love, I'll just sit and listen to the recording as I try to record these when I do it, and I'll then figure it out and then kind of massage it into an actual piece that I can play again and again. But also the beauty of these spontaneous
live and
performances live, it's only existing for the people there. It's so fragile and beautiful, and it kind of goes against everything that we do today, where everything is archived. My chicken sandwich is archived, and here, this is what I wore today, and this is
not really in the moment.
This is the total opposite. Like, hey, I'm going to play this piece of music, and you'll never hear it again. It's just a little gift that we're giving, because the audience gives it to me, certainly. And so it's this gift that we're all creating together, and then that's it. And
do you ever have nerves before you go on live? Like what am I going to get? Am I going to get anything? Am I going to get a lot? Do you ever think about that before you go on? Like, what am I going to do?
And then, but you can't, like, that becomes an obstacle, like that negative thinking. It's really difficult. And sometimes you go into that negative place, regardless of whether you're sitting at a piano in front of people. Like, as humans, we go into these negative thought patterns all the time.
Happens? What if that happens?
What if this happens? And what is that? And then sometimes, like, I'll sit there, and then you'll get into that, like, oh my God, there's an audience here. I'm at a piano. I have no idea what I'm going to play. This is ludicrous. Why are these people here? That it's that whole thing where you just feel like, oh my God, I'm a fraud. This is, and then, but you can't go into that thought pattern, because that becomes its own obstacle. And in anything in your life.
Well, especially in this, because you really have to focus on being receptive.
Absolutely. Like, I become the antenna, and if you have, if you're listening to the wrong radio, what do they call it? Like, KRAP crap radio, like listening to these negative thought patterns.
Go away, turn that off.
Tune it out. But that's exactly, I describe that to people as, it's like when I do this work, it is like tuning into a radio station, because I do believe that all of these frequencies are alive. Things are active, and it's just up to us to be able to tap into it, even if it's just for a moment. You've built that bridge
just enough to get the resonance and the
it's a little tether to another realm. And music in itself is a ghost, because music is intangible. If I play a note, it's gone. The frequency, who knows where it goes? Like, that's what's fascinating, is you play a note, and then where does it go? It's in the air. It's hanging out
into space.
It's not tangible. And the only way that we can listen to music is it's an archive of the thing. The real thing is gone. So it is a ghost, and I love that. Like, bringing that into that
recordings were so precious.
I never thought about that.
The earliest recordings of
music.
It
is, and it's so special to do these performances just where I create in front of the audience. They're giving me the energy, the space is giving me the energy, and I'm giving it right back. And then, hey, it only existed for us at this moment.
I imagine crowds are different too. The audiences are different, so you probably get back different feelings from the different audiences in different areas, maybe.
Absolutely.
Which would change your performance, which would change the whole experience.
And especially if you're in Lily Dale, an audience full of mediums, I mean, they're picking up on all kinds of stuff.
In Lily Dale, I was alone recording. I was not performing. I would love to, when this project is done and the album is finished, to go back there and do a concert. That would be really amazing. And we've talked about that, but right now, no, I was just there.
Oh, you were alone. Okay.
Working.
The project itself.
Yeah. One night, and you bring this up, it's really funny. I was nervous. There was a medium that I was staying with. Her name is Tracy Schaefer, and she's known for capturing orbs and spirits with her photography. And she said to me she was fascinated by this project. And all the mediums, they were so gracious. They were all so interested in this. She said, do you mind if I come into the auditorium while you're playing one night and take photographs and see if we can get anything?
Oh, cool.
And I said, well, sure, that would be great. And so she came in and she said, just play, just, don't even think about me. And I was playing, and then later, lo and behold, you see these beautiful round orbs. Some are blue, some are more of like a whitish color, and they're floating around me. They're floating under the piano. And just to show you how small of a town Lilydale is, I love this story. So she was really excited. So we got orbs. Look at these photos, and she was showing me. And I left a flash drive with her. I need to get those photos from her. But the next morning, I always made a little ritual where I'd make some coffee and I'd sit on the porch. And so the very next morning, an elderly lady walks by, and everyone in Lilydale says hello. It's everyone's very friendly. And she said, oh, hello. And I said, oh, good morning. And she said, are you visiting here? And I said, yes. And she said, where are you from? And I said, I'm from San Francisco. I'm a musician. I'm doing a project in the auditorium. And she said, oh, you're the orb lady. So within a matter of 8 hours, it had gone
became
through
the orb lady.
So I was the orb lady. But it was fascinating. It was fascinating. But at that moment, you were saying, was I nervous? Yeah, when she was taking those photos, because I didn't know.
Like, is she getting anything? How will I know?
Yeah, and what if she gets something, or what if she gets, and then, going out into the woods and taking photos, and there are things that show up, and I can't explain them. And I go into this, I'm not a spiritualist. And I say I'm neither a believer nor a disbeliever. I just am fascinated at learning, and I feel there's so much that we don't comprehend and will never be able to understand. I am just enamored with the possibility of all of this.
Well, I think from an early age, we're all told, "Oh, don't believe in that. Oh, that's nonsense. Stop saying that. You don't feel anything. Don't."
It seems to be.
You're being, you're being instilled in you since you're a child, and you start to slowly close off any kind of perceptions you have, unless you start to.
I tried.
Force yourself to be open for that kind of stuff.
And as a child, I am as sensitive. I am a bit clairaudient, and as a child, I would talk to people and I could hear things, and then the adults are like, that's silly, don't do that.
It's your imaginary friend. Stop doing that.
And I could see things. I used to tell my mom that I was being visited at night, and I would talk with these people, and you're just told that that's nonsense, and
you're told stop making up stories.
Yeah, but as a child, you're innocent, and it's just there's no filter, so you're not lying. You're like this is just what I feel.
Yep.
And you said that happened to you. Well, how we met was she was
Tell us how you guys met.
When we met.
Well, I was in a bar with some friends.
Another bar?
We met in a bar. How about that?
Another bar. Yeah. Well, I was in a bar with some friends, and she was part of. She was sitting next to me, and she was with the crowd of friends that I knew. She knows the same people I know, and I just kept sensing her energy, and I just kept sensing it, and I just turned around, I just looked at her, and I go, okay. I said, you have to tell me who you are. And I said, besides the fact that you're a very beautiful, stunning woman, I said, I sense a lot of spirit energy around you, and I need to know who you are. And then she said, you told me your name, you told me you're a musician, and you said, and I just came back from Lilydale, and all of a sudden I almost jumped off my seat to the point where my friends all looked at me like, whoa, and I go, Lilydale? What were you doing in Lilydale? And then you said I was And then you mentioned your whole story. And then I turned around and I said, excuse me, but you have to be a guest on the show. I said, you are going to be a guest on Ecto Portal. And then she started telling me stories about Lily Dale. And there was one story that I was fascinated with, the stories where you were outside and then you started singing some vocals, and then they captured some spirit energy, some fairies, fairies, some nature spirits in the pictures. And I saw the pictures, and I go, "Whoa, okay." I said, "You're really coming on the show now."
Well, actually,
anyway, tell the story here.
The pictures I showed you were from another night, actually, with the mediums showing how to photograph these energies. And there are these pictures of me, and taken by different people. You know, it's not like it's a trick camera. It's different people at, you know, and different things come up, and there's no explanation. It's not like, it's, you know, water on the lens, or there's a street light, or, you know, it's nothing like that. There are these just shapes. And but then the one particular night, a group of people, maybe 10 of us or something, decided to go out, because there's part of Lilydale that's the old fairy trail, and this is it's the old fairy trail, and this is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's pitch dark. There's not there's not neon signs and street lights, and there are not cops, and there's not, you know, it's out in the middle of the woods. And a group of us decided to go there in the, you know, after midnight, and we made a pact: no phone, you know, don't take a picture, don't have your phones off. And once we got in there, because this is, you know, where you're supposed to be able to see the fairies, that we would, you know, once we could get in there with our flashlights so we could see, then flashlights off. And so we go in and we bring some blankets and towels to sit on, and we get to, you know, the deepest part, and we decide to sit and kind of camp out here, and we all find a place to sit, and it's like, okay, lights off. And it was scary. I mean, it was so dark. And I don't care how old you are, when you're sitting in pitch dark, it is scary. Like, because your
I've
eyes,
experienced that camping in Mount Shasta.
your eyes won't
really
adjust.
Dark.
I mean, there's nothing. There's
I'm
nothing
a ghost hunter now. I'm used to sitting in the dark in asylums and prisons.
But you must love it, because, you know,
I do.
You do it for a living.
I'm used to it too. Yeah.
But I love it. I'm not saying I don't like it, but it's just that it's a rush.
Well, you have no perception anymore because you can't see anything. So you're
and your eyes aren't going to adjust because there's nothing
nothing to adjust to.
Especially out in the woods, it gets really.
So it was. I'll never forget this as long as I live, and it was so strange and beautiful, and just, you can't explain that. They were saying that fairies can be seen, and then one of the men that we were with said, you know, they like music and sound, and then someone said, well, you know, hey Jill, you know, you're a singer, make some sounds.
On command.
It was like every childlike fantasy. Like, I felt like I was 8 years old. So I'm standing up in the woods in the pitch dark. I almost fell because I couldn't really see what I was standing on. So I stood up, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to do some frequencies and some sounds. And it reminded me of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like, ooh, you know, just finding different notes in a scale. And it's like, okay, let's see what happens. Yeah. And I swear to you, and I hope some of the people that were with me are listening, I swear to you, these things, these beautiful glowing things started coming, and we were all like, oh my god, do you see this? And someone was like, 10 o'clock, and someone was like, yes, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
The photos are fascinating.
I mean, it's
wow.
Well, these we couldn't photograph because we decided, hey, lights off, no phone, we want to just live it. And we were laughing, we were like, no one's ever going to believe this, but it happened. And these beautiful glowing things, different colors, they were big, so it wasn't like they were fireflies, they were big, and they reacted to this music, and I sort of found a little melody that they seemed to like, and I'll never feel that. I'll never forget that feeling of they were just coming out, and you could smell right before they would come out. You would smell this strong cucumber smell, like crazy
Interesting.
strong
Fresh sliced cucumber.
Yeah. And then you would start to see them, and then they would go away, and you would no longer smell the cucumber.
That's interesting.
And this sounds ridiculous, but it really happened, and it would happen again. Like you smell cucumber, and someone says, "I smell cucumber." Yes, yes, and then they would start coming out again, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever encountered. And yeah, and
It's interesting you used to say that, because this past weekend in England, someone told me that there's actually groups, some are ghost hunters who go out. There's actually an expedition now to go to Ireland to look for fairies. There's an actual whole group of people who are going to go do that. It's developing, this new group of people who are looking for fairies.
Because there's supposed to be fairy colonies in certain parts of Ireland that have existed, because there's some very old, dense parts of Ireland, and it's very. Some of the woods there are very primitive, and apparently
Old.
there's some
But
fairy
I just thought
colonies.
that's interesting,
yeah.
because that's a developing thing too now as well.
Yeah. I would love to go look for
Oh my
them
God, that
again
sounds like the
and see.
perfect
And it was-
atmosphere for you.
And it was very, it wasn't frightening. It wasn't, you just felt very soothed by it, I think, and that you connected in some way with
See, I
this.
can see where a camera would totally shut it down, or
Exactly,
a flash
and we
would
all
shut it
agreed,
down.
and we
Yeah.
respected that. Like, we're not going to do that. And at the very end, when we decided to leave, which was maybe 2-3 in the morning, like we were there a long time. That we said, okay, let's try to take a picture, and then of course at that time, they're just pictures in the woods, and
Yeah.
one of the gentlemen there got some beautiful orbs that night, like right after. Huge, beautiful orbs everywhere, but I didn't get anything. I could show you some of those pictures, and I think in the future, like when things are ready to come out, I'll be
Right.
releasing
Yeah.
more of those things. It's too soon, but those photos are stunning. And again, there's no explanation. I mean, they're all different. It's not like someone has a filter I wonder if they have that. Do they have a phone app that's like the spiritual orb filter that puts that stuff? But this was not, certainly not.
I'm sure they do. They have a phone app for just about everything now.
Probably, yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Put fairies in your photographs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's cool. So is there any projects that you, in the future, that you want to do that you haven't done yet? Like any ideas, things you would like to try that you haven't really done?
Oh, I mean, they're places I would love to go and continue to do this. Like, it's beautiful to just like be in these environments. I have some shows coming up
Tell us.
in October that I'm excited about. If you're in the Bay Area, please come out. I am on Friday the 13th, October 13th. I am in the San Francisco Botanical Gardens, and they're bringing a grand piano in there, in the Poison Gardens and the Garden of Fragrance. And so I'm going to be doing a concert, and part of it will be a sonic seance where I'm going to create music with everyone there, and also tell some wicked tales from the plant world through history, and that's on Friday the 13th. And then on October 27th, I'm back in the Presidio Officers Club.
Oh yeah, tell us a little bit about that. You were talking about
which
that earlier.
is a return, because I did one of these projects in the Presidio, which began in 2015. And I worked with the historians there and the archivist, and was able to go in on my own with someone accompanied me into these abandoned buildings, and I did all this research, and then was able to present some of these findings and some of the stories, because these stories go back decades and decades. Like there are newspaper articles about some of these ghost stories from the Presidio, and then I thought it would be fun. It's like, wow, could we find people that actually worked there, past or present, and interview them, that had a personal ghostly
connection with
encounter?
it.
And I thought, it would be fun to find 2 or 3. And don't you know, I I sent out an interdepartmental email, and they were kind enough to forward it, to the list. And I got over 100 and some responses.
That's
and I'm
a
like, oh
lot.
my God. So I picked about 50 people to interview. And don't you know, the crazy thing was I interviewed these people. Some of them worked there in the 1990s, and some people work there now, and and they didn't know each other, and they did different jobs, but they had the exact same thing to tell me. I mean, of different points and different things that they
Similar
experienced.
stories. Wow.
They're the pair of swinging doors. Like it became almost a joke. It's like, oh, another thing about these swinging doors, which have since been removed. I think because there was just so much activity
That's
in
when
that
you can
kitchen.
tell a story has truth, is when different people who don't know each other tell the same story.
Oh, absolutely. And it
Yeah.
was just
It validates it
uncanny.
then.
And what was beautiful at the show, a lot of these people came because I was presenting their story, and they got to meet each other, and that was lovely to connect. It's like, oh my God, you
Yeah.
saw the swinging, the guy
Comparing
looking through the
notes to
swinging
each other.
doors, and there, I'm not allowed to reveal what buildings or what numbers and stuff, but there are in the actual building inspector documents that say, this particular building, electrical upgrades, blah, 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 and this happened and that. And it says there is a ghost on the second floor. A light must be kept on to prevent unwanted activity. I swear. And these are in the building documents. And I presented some of those at the lecture. I had to tape out the number of the building. And I wanted to do the project at that time because now, as you know, the Presidio, you can, rent an apartment there. There are dudes throwing Frisbees. And, it's a very different environment than it was.
It's pretty rare, though, because even
Yeah.
here in town, I mean, we've tried. We've had our group together for about 9 years, and they would not let anybody in at all.
Well,
Even
it was,
one or two people, they would just. I mean, I ran into one who I almost got in, but they flat out did not want people wandering around those old buildings. This is before any of the renovations occurred. This is when they were still vacant. They sat vacant for years, and they just would not let anybody in. So it's nice that they let somebody in to look around and.
Yeah, it's interesting because my approach to it is, I'm not going in as a ghost hunter. You know,
Right.
I'm going in to sort of honor the place and create something from it. And I did feel like you that I wanted to go in there at that time because it's changing so
Yeah.
quickly, and that sonic energy will be lost because,
Especially
or
with
at least
changes.
diluted. It's gonna be a lot less powerful than it had been because when I first moved to San Francisco, it was in the 1990s, and the Presidio was so mysterious and intriguing because you remember it was gated, and it's like, no military personnel only,
Yep.
no
Yeah.
admittance, do not cross this point. And then you heard all of these stories like it's haunted in there.
Letterman
there's
Hospital was still
cemeteries,
around.
Letterman Hospital.
I was born
yeah.
there. Yeah, Letterman Hospital. Yeah.
Oh, were you born at Letterman Hospital?
I was, yeah.
Wow. Oh my God. There's some beautiful photos that I unearthed from this project. And you hear about people seeing those ghosts of the wounded soldiers. And then there was a secret cemetery, the Maritime Cemetery.
I've heard about that cemetery.
And that
Yeah.
was only
Really?
in existence for a short time, like in the late 1800s through like 1915 or something. And
In the Presidio?
yeah.
Wow.
And then, so like in 1900, they banned burials
Yeah, they
in San
removed all the
Francisco,
cemeteries.
so they had to move all of the bodies. And then then you have Colma, which is where they move the bodies, and that's now City of the Dead, which is where all the cemeteries are.
More dead than
'Cause
living.
They did exactly, and because they didn't allow
Yeah.
cemeteries in San Francisco anymore. Well, this Maritime Cemetery was for sailors and foreigners and indigents and people that didn't have any family, and they just put them all in this one little cemetery, this little lot. And when it was time to move and all of that, well, there was really no budget, and these there was no family to want to claim these people. So they just moved the headstones, and all those bodies are still there. And they were found, this was found in a renovation many years later, that there was just full of bodies and coffins under
That
there.
happened with the Oddfellow Cemetery, Lone Wolf Mountain. They literally put out a call saying, if you want your relatives moved, come move them. And so they said, oh, well, we removed all the bodies, but they're finding, like, they found a little girl's
Like that little
casket
girl,
in somebody's
yeah.
basement last year.
Wow.
Over in by
So they suspect there's probably more.
Rossi Playground over there in Richmond. They found it in her basement. Oddfellows paid for it to have reburial, a new coffin. And
Yeah.
Wow.
looked up her name, found a genealogy, and found her, I think, great nephew in the Bay Area. So we did a little research on it, but her parents were Oddfellows because they were in the Oddfellow Cemetery. So it was nice that they got to rebury her. But
Yeah.
We
so that
were
shows
there.
you that stuff happened.
I
There's
was
a
there to
lot of
witness her
coffins.
reburial. Yeah.
It is, and it's heartbreaking because it's, there's just no place for them to go, or no money to move them, and so the headstones were moved, and that was a thing I learned that was really fascinating about. Now still the cemetery for military is there, the Presidio.
That's the only one I think
cemetery.
they still bury there. I think it's the only one they'll still bury is that one in the Presidio. The rest of them, the Columbarium in Richmond is the only place other than that
the
cemetery.
Columbarium,
Yeah, the Columbarium.
So there's still
was
burials
amazing.
there, but do you have to be in the military?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, very specifically.
And is
That's
the
only
pet
reason.
cemetery still?
It's
Yeah,
still
that's still
there.
there.
The
I'd like to
freeway-
visit that.
They cut down all the trees. They removed the white fence that used to be around it. And the freeway literally... So the cemetery's here. The freeway goes like this. So you literally now pretty much have to crawl almost under the freeway
Yeah.
to get to it. Which is sad because it looked really cool before they built the freeway.
Yeah, I remember someone telling me it's really hard to get to.
But at least they didn't take it out.
They did, yeah.
They
didn't
left
take
it
out.
alone because I think a lot of people are like, no, that's been here for a long,
Yeah,
long time.
yeah.
The graves are from
Yeah.
World War II and all the way up.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories was an email that I got from a guy who was an electrician there. And I think this was in the 1980s. And because at that time there were military families that
Right.
lived there only.
Right.
And one of these houses was vacant at the time, so he was called to that house to do some work. And he saw the number of the house, and he said, oh yeah, this is that house. There's a story there that there's a little boy ghost that lives up in the attic. And he told his coworker, isn't that house that's supposed to have that little ghost boy? And the coworker's like, yeah, I had heard about that. And the story goes that there was a family that lived there, and this little boy loved to play up in the attic and open the window and sit and dangle his legs, from the window seat. And was always told not to do that, and he fell out of the window and died.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And they say that his ghost still likes to be up there sitting in the open window, and he'll open the window. And the electrician said that the story he had heard that the window would keep opening by itself, so some workers nailed it shut from the inside. So when he got that call, he said to his partners, like, yeah, let's go check this out and see, is that window up there, and is it nailed shut, and this is the story. And so this is what he told me. They went there and they saw there's the attic, and they go up into the attic, and there's the window, and lo and behold, they see it's nailed shut from the inside.
Wow.
And he said, I kid you not, Jill, as I walked back out to the truck, my partner and I looked up at the window, and it was open.
Wow.
Huh.
That's crazy. And so then another guy contacted me that had worked there like in the 90s or so. It was a different decade. He went to that house, and he said, and he didn't know of the story. And he said, I went up there, and I went up to the attic, and he said it was the strangest thing. I felt like there was a presence up there, and out of the corner of my eye, I kept seeing what looked like a little child in the window, sitting in the window, a little a spirit. And so he didn't know the story,
Totally.
but I could, because it was the same building number.
Yeah.
It's
You're
like, oh
like,
my God, that's that
okay.
building. So now they have told me, I don't know if this is true, but the story goes that the window is now nailed shut from the inside and the outside.
To keep it really shut.
Yeah, to keep it really shut. But isn't that wild that this stuff
Yeah.
goes on? It's, not talked about, but these are things that they're in the documents and things they've called. I don't know what the proper word for it is, but just a cleansing service. Is it a spirit cleansing or something?
Cleansing,
to come
yeah.
in
Yeah.
and work in some of those buildings. That has happened.
Now, over time or recently? Like, did you hear people who did that over time? Over time that they stayed there, or is it just recently that they?
I think when something is vacant and or there's like supposed activity and before they were remodeling.
Oh, okay.
That's
Usually what stirs it up too. At least that's what we find with ghost hunting. When a house is remodeled, it stirs up a
lot of
Oh, yeah. So then you would want to do that before the remodeling.
Well, usually it'll stir up while you're doing it, but it's best, like you said, as soon as they're done, then do it, then cleanse it. Because you're stirring up all that energy that around from the building when you're ripping walls down and changing things. So if that energy is around a place they're used to and it's starting to change,
Sure.
you're upsetting the
It's
balance of the
disrupting.
energy.
Yeah.
So they say cleanse afterwards. But ghost hunters know
Wow.
that energy is going to be disrupted, and we're going to be able to, pick up on that if we go in. So we've gone into a place before and after a renovation just to see. And we've gotten some, but usually right after renovation, you'll stir up a lot.
And what do you like to use? Like, because I'm not,
I use audio. Ironically enough, my main thing is audio more than anything else.
Audio, because you want to be able to document or get whatever sounds or whatever sounds or whatever's in the atmosphere is recorded as much
I
as
recorded
possible.
different frequencies
Yeah.
that pick up different sounds and different levels at different frequencies. And it's interesting what I can pick up. I'll have 2 or 3 recorders at the same time, all recording at different frequencies, and one will record something, the other one won't. So you just never know what it will pick up on.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you say, the different vibrations and frequencies and stuff.
And people have left cameras overnight too, and the cameras will pick up on different stuff too.
So it's
Yeah.
that's my most, I get the most results from is audio. Mm-hmm. Just because as long as you know who's there, and if it's just you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You were mentioning to me, since we're talking about stirring up spirit energy with renovations, this has nothing to do with renovations, but you were mentioning to me that you were in this auditorium when there was a thunderstorm going on. Now, thunderstorms are also stir up spirit energy as well. And since you were in a place which has been stirring up spirit energy for decades now, I'm sure that thunderstorm had a lot to do with you picking up on a lot of that frequencies, a lot of that energy. That thunderstorm was probably emphasizing that.
Kind of stir
You've
things up.
you've witnessed thunderstorms, or when it's
Never. No. Yeah,
no. Anthony, you witness thunderstorms when you're investigating a place. A thunderstorm can stir up a lot
Penhurst Asylum, it was
Yeah.
ironically, it was a 28 building estate it was a former asylum up until the late 90s in Pennsylvania. We're the only ones in there. There's 3 of us, and the guide comes in, brings us in. All of a sudden, a huge thunder, lightning storm, rain. It sets off all the fire alarms in the building, and then they went up and they turned them off. 5 minutes later, the thunder hit again, turned them all on again. And they said the entire 10 years that one guy was working there, he's never seen the fire alarms do this. There's been a ton of storms worse. Thunder alarm, did it turn them all on again? So we already started our first half hour with dealing with the fire alarms, and we had some interesting
So the
energy.
thunder itself? No, I'm sure lightning.
We don't know. Energy?
It's just
Because you could feel the energy in the air from
Yeah.
the electricity
Yeah.
and the rain, and you can feel that energy when the storm's
Yeah.
happening. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just a weird night, and it started with that. So.
Well, and what's crazy is just there's so much that we can't hear because it definitely, yeah, they're just sonics and frequencies, and obviously you see animals reacting to things like when the weather changes or there's an earthquake or something. The animals can hear and sense these frequencies, and there's just so much out there that as humans, we are only hearing like 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, and there's a lot of stuff happening. I'm fascinated with this infrasound, that's like sounds under 20 hertz that you can't distinguish audibly, but that you react to them, and your things will change in your body, and where you're just completely oblivious.
You mentioned that you're a clairaudient. Now, clairaudient is where you're able to hear frequencies and sounds that other people can't hear. And of course, I've experienced clairaudience myself many times, and usually it's a sound that's coming from far away, but you hear it because it's very clear. When you've experienced clairaudience, how has the change in the atmosphere and the change in how you feel? How have you experienced it, and how has it worked as opposed to normal sound? To a normal sound
difference
frequency.
Between the two?
Yeah. What's the difference between the two that you've experienced?
Yeah. It's really strange because this is something that I'm still trying to harness and tap into, and I don't talk about it much, but this is the perfect show to talk about it.
Right.
But I notice, I do hear, and it usually comes from one side of my ear or the other. Like they'll come from, in a recording studio, you can pan something hard left and hard right, and 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 and 6, and they'll come from these different directions, and I'll hear just this strange music. And the way it first started was a few years ago, because this is something that I think I've always had this, but I really never identified it or focused on.
Did you do that with people like, did you hear that? And they're like, what?
Right. And
so
there was this time, this was a few years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, that I would wake up at night and I'm like, oh my God, that neighbor's got his TV and it's blasting, and who the hell is blasting today? And and there was no TV. I mean, like, there was no neighbor blasting the TV. It was just, I was just hearing this stuff.
And you were tuning into something.
And it sounded like a muffled TV show through a wall. Like that kind of thing. And I thought, what is going on? And then I would lie back down and I'd hear it again. And so initially I thought, what is this neighbor? Why is he playing all this? And there was nothing. And then I started hearing it in different rooms and then there were these distinguishing different voices. Like there was a man's voice, and then there was another woman's voice who sounded like she was British, and that they're coming from different areas. Like the man's voice was always like down at, what is this, like 7 o'clock, and then the woman was and I couldn't make out what they were saying. It was driving me crazy though. And you usually hear this at night when you're lying in bed, just sort of in between,
because you're most open.
Yeah.
It's hard to sleep sometimes, I would imagine.
It would drive me crazy. And
You're
it
like,
was
I
the
have to
same
get to sleep,
voices, and they were so urgent, and they were muffled. I could not understand what they were saying. And it drove me crazy for months. And I finally talked to someone who is a sensitive, and she's a medium, and she said, well, you just have to tell them, you have to physically sit up in bed and say, there's nothing I can do for you. You
Go
have
talk
to
outside.
move on. Keep your voice down.
Yeah.
No, so the one night I did this, and I felt kind of it's like I had never done anything like that before, but I sat up in bed alone in my apartment, and I said, I don't know what you want from me. I can't help you. I wish I could do something. I don't understand what you're saying. You're going to have to move on.
Taking command of it. You have to take command of it.
There's nothing for you here, and you're going to have to move on. I wish I could help you. I cannot. And then I didn't hear those particular people anymore. But people do come in, but it's very muffled. I'd love to learn how to kind of open that channel a little bit more. Or maybe I don't.
Reluctantly, maybe.
Well, you kind of are. You kind of are learning that anyway.
And so with my music, when I'm doing that, I don't hear. I'm not hearing that, like that isn't a part of the music that I'm doing, or maybe it is
part of the same tool,
subconsciously or
maybe.
something.
Just a different part of the same tool. You're just focusing differently. Maybe.
Right, maybe it's part of this palette. You know, you have like an artist has a palette. Like this is just something. But I would love to. You know, I mean, you're a medium. Like, can you turn it off and on? Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, or it would drive you nuts if you're like walking in a grocery store and you can.
I think ghost hunters have that pickup on that, because I've had that with my name where I'm walking down the street and I hear Tony. And I look around and there's no one around and I keep walking. That's happened. But I think the more you, especially with audio, the more I get into it, the more I hear things that.
Well, I've lived in my apartment for a long time, and it's in an old Victorian building. I mean, there is energy in that apartment. Others have told me, you know.
Is that where do you hear some of it in that building?
Well, one of the most beautiful things that ever happened to me was I was in my apartment, and in the bathroom there used to be a light fixture that would hang over the mirror, and I would stand in that mirror to put on my makeup and, you know, get ready to go. And one day I was putting on my makeup and standing, you know, in the mirror, and I hear someone go, Jill, and I look, and I thought there was a neighbor at the door, or, you know, someone, and I live alone, so it's like it's not anyone inside. So I look out the door, I open the front door, which is next to the bathroom, and there's nobody there, and I thought, God, that's weird. I thought I heard somebody calling me, and came back, and I'm in front of the mirror putting on my makeup, and then I hear this again, Jill, and I walk out, and same thing, there's no one around. And then it happened a third time. I hear the calling my name, and I thought, this is crazy. I'm really hearing someone calling me. And I walked down the hall, and at that moment I heard the loudest crash I ever heard, and I shuddered because I thought, what the hell? And I turned back, and that light fixture had fallen to the floor,
So
and
somebody
smashed
maybe had warned you.
Yeah,
Somebody was-
because
somebody
I would
was
have
trying to-
been dead or had a terrible
Wow.
concussion, because it was this heavy metal, not a chandelier, but almost
Good thing
like
you were
a
paying
hanging.
attention.
Yeah, and so I really feel
So you
like
used it.
a guardian
did
was
use it.
calling
Yeah.
me away.
We are actually completely out of time.
Wow.
Yeah, we
Well,
are.
You have to come
talk
back
all
again.
night. Oh, this has been so fun.
And to answer your
Thank you.
question, yes, you can control it, but it comes on its own accord anyway. So you can and you can't control it, really.
Okay, any last minute
Yeah, any last minute?
plugs?
Yeah,
you
well,
wanna do?
I'd love, if you've enjoyed the conversation, you can visit me at jilltracy.com and get the info on all the shows.
GoFundMe
this
site?
Yeah,
month.
the GoFundMe.
The GoFundMe page. I'd love to, send you some of this music from Lilydale.
Absolutely. Well, definitely.
Thank you
Yeah, I
guys
love
so
that.
much for listening. And
Thanks for
having
coming
me
on. It was great.
It was a
Yeah,
blast.
you have to come back so we have more conversations.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely
I
come
will be
back.
back.
All right, folks. That's it for tonight on Ecto Portal. We'll see you again next week.
See you next week.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Ross Bugden.